Hey guys, it's Jack here, and I didn't think I would be having to make this video tonight. So, to give you some background, I was recently talking to a couple of friends of mine who have just made it up to Marineford. And they spoke about how they really didn't like the way Ace died. They even went so far to call it dumb, stupid, it was silly. And I was there and I was stewing over it and I was fighting them a bit with it because I found his death to be very impactful. And I started thinking about it more like, yeah, it's an impactful death, but do they have some points? So I decided to, stew over it for a couple of days, think about it more, and then, digest my thoughts to you here on this video in hopefully somewhat of a coherent way. But before we get into my opinion on whether or not it was dumb or not, whether or not it was justified or needed, let's get into just a quick recap of what happened. We'll set the stage, as it will. So, Luffy has just fought all the way through Impel Down, he's fought all the way through Marineford, and he's finally been able to rescue his brother. A bunch of shenanigans happens, he frees Ace from being captured by the Marines who are planning to execute him, and they plateau down to the ground, and they have an awesome, fight's a strong word, but they have an awesome battle sequence where the two of them are complementing each other perfectly. That in itself is a very underrated moment, I reckon. Ace and Luffy fighting through all the Marines until they eventually get stopped by Aokiji, I thought was a great little role Oda did there. You were finally seeing a payoff to how much these two brothers cared about each other, how much Luffy struggled to not only save him, but struggled to the point where he can now fight with Ace as an equal. And to see that, I'm so glad Oda showed us that before Ace's death, because unfortunately, and this is an important sidebar to bring in here, if you're an anime-only watcher, we got a lot more of Ace in the anime than we did the manga. He shows up, it's all the same in the manga up until Alabasta, where Ace comes, he destroys the Baroque Works ships, and then he gives Luffy the Viva card, and then he gets out of there. In the anime, he travels with them for a bit, so you grow more accustomed to Ace, you grow closer to him, you see his fondness for Luffy and his care as an older brother who's kind of sitting back on the sidelines, just viewing the way Luffy interacts with his crew. So I do think the anime did it better, actually. But especially if you're a manga-only viewer, you needed to see, even then, you can argue that you needed more. But that little scene of them fighting together, complementing each other with their fighting styles, the scene of Luffy running beside Ace as an equal, compared to how when they were kids, and he was always a meter or two behind Ace, struggling to keep up. Like, the imagery there that Oda shows to represent the balance that these two characters now have, I thought was quite beautiful. But they're running. Ace has an encounter with Aokiji where we see Ace be able to overpower Aokiji. In that moment, that's not me saying Ace is more powerful than Aokiji, because I don't reckon he actually is. But in that moment, he's able to use their differences in affinity to get the upper hand on Aokiji, and Ace and Luffy continue on their way. It's important to note as well, as this is happening, we have Whitebeard who's elected to stay behind to not only fight Teach, but to also get his family a chance to escape. Because that's the type of man that Whitebeard is, and we're going to have a whole character analysis on him. That one's been in the works for a while. That's a video I'm really looking forward to making. Whitebeard is probably top 5 favorite One Piece characters for me. But Whitebeard's given this speech. He's told his sons to get going, leave me behind. I am going to guard your rear and let you guys escape. And Akainu's seeing all this. He's seeing them all getting away, and he stops. He takes his hat off, and he starts insulting Whitebeard. Now this is affecting the Whitebeard crew, the Whitebeard allies. They're all, because they don't, Pops, as in Whitebeard, is the man that they all respect the most. He's their father, and in a lot of ways he's done more for their lives than their actual fathers have. Their love for him is just unparalleled. but they're all like they're hearing Akainu's words, but they're also hearing in their head. They're hearing Pop's words. They know that turning around isn't the best. That it's going to be kind of diminishing Whitebeard's sacrifice. So they guard their heart essentially, and they run forward. But he keeps going, and he starts dissing Whitebeard as a father, saying things like how, he was a worthless father, he was a worthless man, he was a worthless pirate, all this type of stuff. And Ace can't bear that, and he stops. And his crewmates are trying to get him to continue on because they know that this is exactly what Akainu wants. But Ace is having none of it. He won't allow Whitebeard's name to be besmirched, and they have Ace throws out a fire fist at Akainu. It's exactly what Akainu wants. He responds with a magma fist. And we see the difference in power between these two opponents, because the magma burns the fire and Akainu overpowers and smothers Ace's flames. Ace gets sent hurtling away. He's actually burnt from it, just showing how hot magma is like in the One Piece world. Because in our real life, magma doesn't burn that much hotter than fire. Of course it burns hotter, but it's not such an overwhelming difference. But the way magma and lava is played up in the One Piece world definitely seems to be a stronger tier than it is in our world, especially with for non-spoilers' sakes, even though it is in the anime now, especially because of what happens with everything in Wano, with what we see there. Magma's definitely kind of played up to be a very important element in One Piece. Oda has even come out and said that it is one of, if not the most destructive devil fruit in the series. So, and Akainu shows that by being I can't even speak, Jack, Jesus Christ, being able to overpower Ace. Ace gets sent away, and as Ace is kind of being sent flying, Akainu sees his chance, because Luffy has let his guard down. And he erupts over to Luffy, magma fist in hand, goes to kill him, but that's when we get it. Ace isn't going to allow anyone to kill his brother. He would more than gladly sacrifice himself for Luffy. If Ace could choose how he would die, protecting his crew, protecting Whitebeard, and, this is headcanon, but in my mind, above all else, protecting his brother is the way that he would want to go out. So he jumps in front without any hesitation, and he gets impaled. In a comical way, he gets fisted, as a lot of people like to say. Right through the chest, his internal organs are burned, and Jinbei and Marco end up going to confront Whitebeard as Ace lies dying in Luffy's arms. And it's a very emotional scene. Ace is, talking to Luffy about, was it good that he was alive? Was he a good brother? All this type of stuff. And he speaks about how he would have liked to see Dadan again, and that he loves Luffy, and that he's glad that he was alive, that he was born, which brings his whole character to a very nice finale, because that's something that Ace was confronting at a very, very early age, much younger than anyone should be confronting the philosophical question of one's existence. And we know why Ace was doing that, because of his Roger being such a notorious criminal. Did Ace deserve to be alive? And Ace coming to that final answer to his lifelong question as he's dying in his brother's arms is just beautiful, beautiful writing by Oda. The most impactful part of Ace's death, and I don't think it's like this is questionable. I feel like it's like certainty. It's the reason why Ace's death is so emotional. Two reasons. One, I would say it is the beautiful imaging of that question being answered of his that he always had. That is very emotional. Even more so, though, is the impact that this is having on Luffy. Even thinking about it now kind of gets me choked up a little bit. But we've been watching Luffy, or reading as well, watching. We still freaking watch manga with our eyes. Jesus Christ, Jack. We've been watching Luffy struggle and struggle and struggle ever since he found out that Ace was going to be executed back on Amazon Lily. He invades Impel Down. He goes through absolute hell and agony there as he deals with all the consequences of fighting Magellan. He shortens his lifespan. He then goes all the way to Marineford, back to back with no rest, enters the fray, and going up against enemies much more powerful than him at this stage. Surviving it all though, persevering through it all until he eventually he punches through Kobe, like a dear friend of his. He punches out his grandfather. He goes through physical and emotional pain, all for the sake of rescuing his brother, the man that he loves. He rescues him. He gets the euphoria, is like, it's probably, you probably even need a stronger word than that. But he gets the euphoria of rescuing Ace and being able to fight side by side by him as an equal. He's feeling the hope. He's feeling he's getting the belief that everything's going to be all right. And what ends up happening? Ace ends up dying in his arms. And Oda deserves more compliments for this than he gets, but having Luffy just break down, his mind essentially shut down, not being able to handle what he's feeling and witnessing as his mind just completely turns off. He's screaming and crying in agony. It's both in the manga and in the anime, they've done a great job of showing us the audience and kind of getting us the audience to actually feel that pain with Luffy. It was done superbly in both mediums there. And to have Luffy just shut down and become catatonic essentially it's so much better than in a lot of anime. And of course, in some of these instances, it's warranted. It works well for the story. But it works so much better than Luffy just getting angry, like, how dare you kill my brother, Akainu, and like throwing fists with him. Like this, you can't understate how much, hundreds of times better what happens with Luffy here. It is probably, I would say, the most emotional moment in all of One Piece. For me, at least personally, I know, nothing happened. Help me, Luffy. I want to live. All these other like moments, like Luffy, the despair of his crew being sent away. There are a lot of emotional moments in One Piece. I reckon Luffy breaking down because of Ace's death, though, is probably the most. I would even go so far as to say probably top 5 in just anime, top 5 in just fiction, I reckon. And because I've titled this, I'm going to title this video something along the lines of, was Ace's death dumb? Jack, you're just talking about Luffy. It needs to be brought up. This is a very multifaceted discussion that we're having here. And for the effect that it had on Luffy and the way it affected Luffy and the way it played out to affect Luffy, it was done superbly. I don't really think that there can be much of an argument to state the benefits in a very tragic sense here. The benefits that it had for Luffy's character development as a character and how tragically beautiful it was written by Oda is just, it's a chef's kiss. It's perfection. But the lead up to Ace's death, that is something that we need to discuss. We've already concluded that the results of the build-up to it was perfect, but did the lead-up leave something to be desired? And I'm going to give a bit of a cop-out answer, a bit of sitting on the fence, and say a bit of yes and a bit of no. And let me explain. I reckon, in a very broad sense, Ace was incredibly dumb, silly, stupid, ungrateful, spitting in the face of all the sacrifices that are being made, all of this stuff, by turning away and falling to Akainu's provocations. No, sorry. I wholeheartedly do agree with that. The reason, though, why I wouldn't call Ace's actions... I'm trying to... It's so hard to formulate my thoughts on this matter. It's... Ace doing this is dumb, but because I reckon it is incredibly in character, Ace, the character doing this, makes a lot of sense, if that makes sense to you guys. Let me try explain more, put it a little bit more elegantly. It's Ace has always, like, he gets compared to how Roger was, and that is very reckless, very, like, prone to, like, emotions, very, I kind of summed it all up perfectly in the first word there, reckless. Very hot-headed, very emotional, very quick to provocation. And that's kind of good writing as well, because we know the person Ace hates the most is Roger. So to see him kind of reflecting a lot of Roger's emotions, I reckon, is quite well done. And it, like, the psychology there is very interesting in my mind. But we know this about Ace, so in my opinion, it's very in character for him out of everyone to react to Akainu's provocations. 2 points on this as well that I want to bring up. One is that one of the reasons why he would be so quick to anger because of this is because Whitebeard is not just his father, but his savior in a lot of ways. Saved him from the inner demons that he was facing in his life by being what Ace always needed, and that was a father. And through that, it gave Ace the ability to eventually reach the answer to his question that he's always had. So, and even more so than, like, just because of all the issues that he did have with his own father, for the respect and admiration that he had for Whitebeard, it was too great. It was too great that it ended up costing him. And essentially it ended up costing the people that sacrificed their lives to try and save him. And you know that if Ace could look back on it, he would have been, like, the self-loathing that he would have felt knowing that he's just died and all the sacrifices that made for him were essentially for nothing would have been huge and all-encompassing on Ace. So that's part of the reason why Ace, it wasn't just like they were insulting anyone. Ace loves with his whole being, essentially. We see that in his crew, and I say crew as in his OG crew and his new crew, the Whitebeard Pirates. But more importantly, we see it with Whitebeard, and we see it with his brothers, Luffy and Sabo, with how just much he loves them. And that probably stems from a lot of the loneliness that Ace felt himself. The loneliness coming from not being able to accept himself. And these three people, the crew as well, but these three named characters here, accepting Ace for who he was and having no issues with Ace, and thinking that he does deserve to be alive. Garp as well, to a lesser extent. But another great aspect of all this that's happening, and this is something I said in the beginning of the video, this is as I was talking to friends, something I realized afterwards as well that I just absolutely loved. Ace doing this shows that he's actually more immature and reckless than Luffy is. And let me explain. Because Luffy, at Sabaody, if you remember, he's confronted by Kuma, he's confronted by a pacifista, he's confronted by Kizaru, an admiral, and he's confronted by Sentomaru, someone who was knocking him around at that time. So, like, whether or not Luffy could beat Sentomaru at that time is totally unquantifiable. At the very least, though, they were relative in strength. Relative to Luffy, who was the captain and a very powerful pirate at the time, meaning that he would be able to destroy a lot of Luffy's crew. And what does he find when he sees these odds? He doesn't try and, spark courage in them all. He doesn't try to give a speech about, guys, come on, let's team together, we're gonna beat them. He sees the situation that they're in, and he shows the true level of maturity that Luffy possesses, and he tells them all to back down and retreat because they're not strong enough at this time to confront these enemies. He knows that we're gonna switch to another anime here really quickly. I personally love it. I know a lot of you probably won't and may not have never seen it. But in Fairy Tail, Gildart's Clive, Shanks's twin brother, with Natsu on Tenro Island, he says to Natsu after completely crushing him just with his aura alone, essentially, he says to Natsu that sometimes the most courageous people are those that know when to back down, and that's what. And that's what. If you want to take away anything from Fairy Tail, that line itself, I reckon you can use in any form of like medium, even our like real life. And that's what Luffy's showing at Sabaody. He's showing courage. It's not cowardice that's making him tell his crew to flee. It's courage to be able to stand up and see where they are and make the right decision to flee to save their lives. Knowing when is the time to fight and when is the time to retreat. It's a valuable lesson that Luffy knew even back then in Sabaody, and something that Ace himself didn't understand. Now, the situation in Marineford is a little bit different, but the overall themes of it, you can compare it to Sabaody. So to see Ace fall to the provocations is something I reckon if the roles were reversed and it was Luffy and Akainu was insulting Luffy's crew, I don't reckon Luffy would turn around and try and fight him. I reckon he would be more focused and prioritized on getting his crew the hell out of there. That's what Luffy would have been doing. And it just goes to show that maybe, just maybe, that balance that we saw in Luffy catching up to Ace isn't true. I think he's actually surpassed him. And I think that's what Oda was trying to show us in the grand scheme of things with Ace's death. You know, whether or not you want to say that Oda has just done this because he needed a way for Ace to die and that was the easiest way to do it, sure, you can say that. I can see that point of view. That you could say that it was lazy writing getting to the majestic writing that we got to. But I think that I think that Oda, we can put enough faith in Oda with everything that he's delivered in One Piece, especially for such a critical moment, for it not just to be laziness and bad writing. Is the actions of Ace turning back on Akainu stupid? 100%. Is it in character for him though? 100%. Does it show great maturity and growth when we compare it to Luffy? 100%. I just reckon like Ace's death, I would never call it dumb or stupid the way that it happened. And that's not me criticizing other people's, like, not just my friends, but I'm sure a lot of you watching might be like, Jack, that was dumb. That was dumb as dog shit. And, like, that isn't something that I'm not so pro what happened to Ace to be like, no, you're wrong, you're an idiot, blah, 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 blah. I'm not that type of person anyway. But I can see where that type of thought stems from. Because you could very well argue to me that, Jack, you're giving Oda a little bit too much credit here. At the end of the day, the facts show that it was a stupid decision, and you could have got to that result in other ways. Like one of my friends brought up, he shouted out the idea of what happens if, you know, Whitebeard was getting beaten down, and it was Ace seeing Whitebeard nearly die that triggered Ace to turn back. Once again, that's not something that Whitebeard would want. But in a lot of ways, that makes more sense going to Whitebeard than just the provocation. Now, I've spent this whole video explaining why I think that provocation does make enough sense for Ace in character to turn around. But there are certainly other options that you could have explored in, like, if you wanted to rewrite that scene, other ways you could have explored that situation. Like, at the end, one silly part of the scene, I find, and I don't think I've seen anyone talk about this, so let me know about it in the comments what you think about it, is that at the end of the day, the silliness for me is that Akainu's provocations probably weren't needed. What do I mean by that? Is that there wasn't like some insurmountable distance between between Akainu and the Whitebeard pirates. What's to have stopped Akainu from just flying over there, erupting over with his devil fruit powers, and causing a head-to-head fight? Like, nothing really? Like, let me know down in the comments if you're like, nah, Jack, he couldn't do that because of X, Y, and Z. I personally don't see why he couldn't do it, and even if he couldn't get there in time, he could have just used his meteor volcano technique, throw all the magma fists up in the sky and just come down on them and, you know, take them down by like an aerial like missile assault. He, like, at the end of the day, the fight still would have gone on. If Akainu wanted to get to them, he would have. But he chose provocation. Once again though, and this isn't me trying to jerk Oda off more than he needs to be, but Akainu shows the success that he has with talking, with what he does to Squad earlier on in the arc, where he's able to convince Squad, one of the most loyal members to Whitebeard, through sheer words, that Whitebeard has betrayed them and causes Squad to attack them. So he's probably like, you know what, I manipulated these dumb motherfuckers pretty easily last time. I don't really feel like fighting right this second. I just had a fight with Whitebeard. I wanna relax my shoulders a little bit. I'm just gonna, you know, insult Whitebeard, and that will get him to stop. If it doesn't stop Ace, it'll stop some of them. So, and it probably also not even just about that stopping Ace. Like, he probably knew specifically that it would stop Ace. Like someone like Akainu, I imagine, had a lot of information on the type of person Ace was to begin with. So, regardless of how you want to look at it, a very, very great scene that I reckon was very well written. Ace being dumb, 100% though. That's how I'm going to kind of finalize this video. Not as long as some of my videos, but talking about this anymore will kind of just... I'll just be talking in circles and just gushing about the scene that I really loved. I do reckon that Marineford, top 2 favourite arcs for me pre-time skip. Very potentially still even the whole series, top 2 favourite arcs for me. The other one is probably if we did all One Piece arcs, I would still say my 2 favourite arcs are probably pre-time skip. And I'm going to spoil it if I ever do a future list. It isn't Enies Lobby, the second one. So, if you're interested in seeing how I would rank all of the One Piece arcs, then let me know down in the comments. But otherwise, I've been Jack Cypher. It has been not just a great pleasure, but a relief to be able to get my thoughts out on this subject. So guys, thank you for listening. Have a lovely night, and I'll see you tomorrow in tomorrow's video. That was very elegantly put, Jack. Jesus Christ, you need to work on that outro. See you later, guys.